and welcome, Patriot Radio News Hour. I'm Joe Jaquint, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group, and our toll-free number, 800-951-0592, the website at allamericangold.com, and welcome to Hump Day. Yeah, here on this Wednesday, and it is another crazy day. We've seen all kinds of wild things happening in the markets all over the world. And today, no exception, we've had this massive two-day stock rally, which really was nothing more than them taking your 401k money and washing it all away. That's just my opinion, but neither here nor there. The hopes and dreams that somehow the Federal Reserve is going to be able to stop raising interest rates. And then we got actual economic data out today, Jason, that did not bode well for that argument. So the Dow down 400 plus points. Gold and silver are down, but really, really strong right now. There's some profit taking. Here's the good news. Silver held 20, gold held 1,700. They've been rallying back, so it's a good sign here in the precious metals market, because I think gold and silver now have come to, well, at least the people that trade it are coming to the realization that whether or not the Fed keeps raising rates, good for gold and silver. The Fed stops raising rates, good for gold and silver. The Fed continues quantitative tightening, good for gold and silver. The Fed ends quantitative tightening, good for gold and silver, Jason, because, listen, just like we've been telling everybody all along, and I know some of you get depressed. Oh, Joe, you're too depressing. Well, let's get excited, because once again, what Jason and I have been telling you is going to happen, it's exactly what's happening. They have no good options. Don't be depressed about it. Be prepared about it. Right, Jason?
Yeah, that's right. You know, the fourth quarter of the year, the actual calendar just started on Monday. So I've noticed this occasionally. It's most quarters. So we were ending third quarter of the calendar on Friday. You know, the first day was Monday. We have these two big, huge days upticking in the markets. You know, the Dow. You know, I don't know how all of these big companies dump their stock buybacks with their employees. Like Walmart, I know Walmart pushes all their employees to buy a bunch of stock, but they could have. You know, seems to me that some of these guys are doing it quarterly, Joe, and so some of this activity in the markets might have just been a huge dump of 401k money into the markets. And here we are on Wednesday, and I guess that's all over with.
Yeah, and again. Here's the realities, as we have been telling you the whole time. And again, it's not depressing. It's just what it is. Listen, a lot of people just rather, hey, don't tell me the truth, right? Because the truth is hard, right? It's hard, right? Why do people lie? Because lying's easier than telling the truth. They don't want to face the realities that are right in front of them. But hey, let's get excited about it. Here's what we know today. Ready? OPEC. 2 million barrel a day rate hike, rate hike, not a rate hike, cutting of crude oil production out of OPEC, by the way, crude oil, massive draws, 3 and 4 million barrel drawdowns on the weekly inventories. Now, some of that was obviously a lot of people, especially with that hurricane were buying extra, and I'm talking about wholesalers, extra diesel, extra unleaded gas, but we had big drawdowns in crude, gasoline, natural gas, diesel. And then today, OPEC announces they're cutting, and this was at the very high end of the range. Remember, last week it was 500,000 barrels. Last Friday, they said, okay, 1 million barrels. Then on Monday, it was 1.5 million. Yesterday, someone said 2 million. And, Jason, today, it came in at 2 million.
There it is. I think we were just talked about it this week. It's like, well, I mean, this is what they're trying to do. So why is it a surprise that they did 2 million barrels? They're trying to cause an energy crisis worldwide for whatever means to their end, right, Joe? So, yeah, I mean, I'm surprised. You know what? I'm surprised it wasn't 2.5 million barrels. How about that?
Well, you know, and I guess the thing that stands out to me here is this just another example of the United States' waning power throughout the world, where they couldn't even get the Saudi Arabia to push back and keep production here. By the way, Brent, $94. NYMEX, the crude here at home, let me just check in here, $87, $88. So think about this. Crude oil's up over almost $12 a barrel from the lows of last week, Jason.
I mean, it's like they want the 70s to be repeated. They want the sequel, oil, energy crisis, and inflation. Here it is, and they do everything they can to create it, not to stop it, Joe.
Yeah, and the other big thing that we are looking at when we talk about it, this is almost reminiscent, really, of the tech bubble.
Yeah.
And let me tell you why. This is the tech bubble with inflation. And the reason why do I say tech bubble? Well, the answer is really simple. When you look at the stock market and go back, Dow 37,000, every metric was saying, hey, these stocks are the most overvalued in history. And they've got tons of them, right? They probably got at least 100 different ways of measuring valuations in debt markets, which Wall Street's a debt market. In 99 out of 100, we're saying this is the most overvalued ever, even compared to the dot-com bubble. And Jason, if that's what this is, right, it can be a scary, scary ride for a lot of people out there. Patriot Radio News Hour will be back right after the break. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour, Joe and Jason. And Jason, I've been watching Credit Suisse. They've been the story this week. After the initial story broke on Monday, things kind of calmed down yesterday. And now this morning, the credit default swaps rising dramatically again. What that means is other banks are telling Credit Suisse, hey, if you want to borrow money against your portfolio, okay, against these loans that you've made, you need to pay us more. In other words, the interest rate that they're charging Credit Suisse to borrow money is rising dramatically. And then, Jason, we know what happens, because this is what happened in 08. The banks just wake up one day and say, you know what, I don't care what rate, we're not going to loan you any money because your portfolio isn't worth the money it's printed on. Yeah,
and I like your comparing to the dot-com bubble, and I like the way you brought in the financial crisis. Every crash is different, Joe, but you can gain a lot of information by looking at past situations. This is definitely a unique situation because, really, it really is a great reset, and we really haven't had anything like this since World War II. Bretton Woods, right? So why do I feel like they're going to have something? We call it the World Economic Forum. Are they going to have some meeting and they're going to call it something? It'll just be Bretton Woods, right, Joe? That's what we're headed for, and then the end result's going to be digital currency.
Yeah, and the bottom line is Credit Suisse now is going to have to aggressively deleverage their investment banking operation to survive all of this. And there's debates here. This is early. I don't think, now I could be wrong. I don't think that, we're going to wake up tomorrow and Credit Suisse will have been shut out of the lending markets. But Jason, this is just these early detections, and we're getting the same pattern that we got with Lehman, the same pattern we got with Bear Stearns, where other banks, no, it's okay. And one bank will say, hey, we got a problem. Like the other day, Bank of America, we got a problem. But then Goldman comes out, nah, hey, it's okay. Today, SocGen, we got a problem. HSBC, nah, it's okay. Listen, believe it or not, as we know this, where there's smoke, there's fire, Jason, and there's a problem.
Well, Joe, I remember when Lehman Brothers went down, and they started talking about how over-leveraged the banks were. And I think, and if I remember this right, I think Lehman Brothers was 333-1 leveraged. It was by far more greedy than the other banks, and it was almost like, well, we're taking you out. And makes me wonder if Credit Suisse is one of two things. Are they over-leveraged more than the other banks? Or do they know that one of the other banks is more over-leveraged? Like, you know what? Why don't you fix my problem because I'm not nearly as greedy as XYZ bank over there. There's going to be some game playing here, Joe, and maybe the first one to want help. Well, why would we help you? Well, because that guy over there is like leveraged 5 times more than I am, and you better fix me first because I'm cheap. It could be simply that, Joe.
Yeah, and again, we don't know the whole story here, but here's what we do know: the overvaluation. Again, remember I was referring to tech bubble like. That's just because of how overvalued. You got to remember, interest rates were 0. Think about the 10-year note for most of 2020 and 2021 was yielding half a basis point, which allowed for these banks and these financial institutions, even stock prices, to be significantly overvalued. You could over leverage. You could borrow money for next to nothing. And now all of a sudden, all of this over leverage is still there. But the problem is now, Jason, yields aren't 0. The 10-year note isn't at 0.5%, and we're seeing all of these early signs, these cracks in the markets appearing. And this one, and again, the banks are the most critical one. It's one thing, hey, the Japanese yen, okay, that's a problem, but it's manageable because no one uses that currency anyway. The British pound, that's worse than the yen, but still, okay, the pound isn't, people use it, but not that much. But when it gets into the financial institutions itself, that's when you got the big problem.
Yeah, let me make some of it a little more basic for somebody who's listening to this, and it's just, it's words that's just bouncing around, you don't get it. One of the basic understandings is when some money goes into the bank, it's deposited in. This is the banking system we have today. If $10,000 gets deposited into a bank, the bank, that physical bank, can then loan out $90,000 on that $10,000. Okay, so they don't want to have high interest rates for this. They don't want to have to borrow money from the bigger bank up above them where they have to do some borrowing. They don't want these high interest rates. It breaks down the system. And if nobody is depositing money, they can't just simply shell out $90,000 for every $10,000. The whole thing breaks down. It's a Ponzi scheme. And they got to keep getting this money in. Well, where's the deposits coming from? Nobody has money to deposit. We're getting the Fed that's supposedly selling off their books and getting rid of assets. They're not printing money. If they're not printing money, that slush isn't coming in so that they can suddenly make more money. Because every $10,000, if the Fed is printing money and you start getting these deposits in, it's great. The banks get, like I said, 90% turnover. They get to do $90,000 in loaning for every $10,000 in deposits that come in. You have to have that, Joe, or else the system shuts down because everybody it's a drug. It's a cocaine habit that these guys can't get their fix, and it breaks down. Credit Suisse obviously isn't getting enough deposits, Joe, and that means they can't shovel out more money. It's breaking down. It's breaking down very fast, Joe.
Yeah, and again, we're going to see how all of this plays out and why you're hearing these calls. Like, man, you turn on CNBC anymore? All as they want to talk about, Jim Cramer's out there crying about, the Fed needs to stop raising rates and they're going to break stuff. And again, the realities are, though, Jason, they really can't. We've got, just like I told you, energy prices rising again. I told you this shouldn't be a shock, right? That's not bad news. Don't be depressed about it. If you're playing it right, you're going to be just fine. And then, of course, we keep talking about the other side of inflation, wages. We got ADP out today. So tomorrow we'll get jobless claims. Friday we're going to get the government's jobs number. ADP came out today. just over 200,000 jobs created. None of that really matters. Right? It doesn't matter. They could have said 5,000. They could have said 500,000. The important number inside of these reports is going to be wages, right? How much are wages rising? And inside the ADP report, more bad news for the Fed. Wages rising again. Those that changed jobs, wages up 15.7%. Those that stayed at their jobs, wages up 7.8%. And Jason, it didn't matter from small to medium to large-sized businesses. Wage inflation still roaring, which you throw that on with the shelter. Shelter and wages are the two biggest components. And, Jason, they just keep going up. I don't see how the Fed can back off.
Right. Well, and you mentioned Cramer. If anyone doesn't know who Cramer is, he's a stock guy. He's like one of the guys they go to. Even in the movies, they put him as the stock guy in the movies now.
He's the main cheerleader
guy
of the central bank. He is on CNBC. He's the big personality.
Yeah, for him to be crying about we need to lower the rates, I don't understand why they don't get it. Which really is, if you raise rates, and this is something you just don't do. But then you print money also. The markets would probably be doing a lot better. It's all about more money. I mean, it's a drug. I wish a guy like Cramer, he won't say it out loud. The Fed needs to give us more money. That's what he wants. That's what they really want. They don't. You can raise interest rates and print a whole bunch of money, and you'll get a mixed bag of results. But that's what they need, Joe. And that's why I think the markets went up Monday and Tuesday. I think a bunch of money got injected in. Like it could be, stock portfolios from employees' funds, right? One of those things that happens at the beginning of a quarter, and now it's over. And now the market's down 300 or 400 points today, and we're going back to this thing that we're in where we're raising rates and attacking inflation, and there is no money being printed. The money's not being printed. That's why things are going this way, Joe. It's all about the Ponzi scheme, and then there's less dollars right now being injected into the system.
Yep, and right now it's about jobs. So here's what good news. I'll give you good news. Jobs are still there, right? There's still job growth. Late yesterday, Amazon, complete hiring freeze on the retail operations, which is pretty much most of their operation. But another one of these big giants heading into the holidays when you're normally adding jobs. Say, hey, listen, we got to freeze. These are things to be concerned about. But as long as jobs hang in there, right, it won't be as Jason and I call, we think we've got the double Great Depression coming, which is a depression with inflation.
Yep.
But that won't be the case if we don't see massive job losses. Now, remember, the Fed's wish list, they just want to lose 1.5 million jobs, Jason, right? And I don't see how they can pull that off.
Yeah, and Joe, if they do reverse, and depending on when they reverse in the future, if they even can get to that point, and whenever that's going to be, these job losses might be permanent. They might not be able to get them back. That's how down the river this whole thing is. If they get their job losses, and I'm sure that they'll get it because they really want to get rid of inflation, they're going to try to bring it down. Well, however long that takes, the amount of jobs that get destroyed through this process, they may not come back. I don't know how they're going to build this thing back up to where people have an income, Joe. This is why I think universal basic income is also coming hot on the heels with this digital currency.
What did we get the other day? That massive increase in food stamps, right?
Yep.
12.5% increase in food stamps.
That's your depression food line, Joe. That's your depression food line.
Right, and we're going to get that cost of living adjustment for Social Security. That announcement's coming here in the next few weeks. That's going to be in the upper eights, right? 8.5, something like that, 8.6, 8.7. So again, the amount of money needed just for people to barely get by is skyrocketing, which tells you again how bad inflation is. How about this number? Mortgage demand. Total mortgage application volume fell 14% last week. That is, you don't see these numbers like that. Normally you'll see, hey, it was down 1% or 2%, because it's a weekly number. Down 14%. They're saying that on as seasonally adjusted basis, Mortgage application volume is now the lowest since 1997. This is huge. This is dramatic. I've got a good friend of mine, and I tell you this. Listen, I know so many small business owners. One of the guys I know, he's a big caterer, and he caters a lot to the mortgage market industry. They do a lot of that stuff. He was telling me last night, he goes, Joe, I'm telling you, these were places, they had 30 people working there. They're lucky if they've got 10, right? This is how dramatic we're seeing it here. Refinance volume 86% lower than the same time last year. And then actual mortgages, this was the other part now, down 47% from the same week last year. And Jason, I mean, we're getting to the point that housing is going to be down 50+%. That would put that housing levels that we haven't seen since the early 90s to the late 80s.
You know, when we had the Depression, back in the late 20s and the 30s, they didn't have Social Security, free money for the poor. They didn't have food stamps, Joe. They didn't have housing help. We're in a depression, Joe. I think we've been in it a long time. I think nobody really wants to say it out loud. But if you compare the 30s to today, look at all the government free help that's out there. That's not somebody standing on their own 2 feet. That's a depression where the government's floating people, Joe.
800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour, Joe and Jason. Yesterday we ran those silver rounds. I've got 20 rolls left. If you want them, I highly suggest you buy them. They're $28.50 an ounce, $570 a roll here. Silver continuing to power back here now, $20.50. So again, remember earlier in the program we said there's early profit taking in gold and silver. That has subsided, and buyers, Jason, stepping in once again. Silver looking particularly strong. Premiums are absolute insanity right now. So the last 20 rolls of rounds at $570 a roll at 800-951-0592. If someone wants to call and say, I'll just take them all, I'll take $10 off, $560, but you got to buy them all. 800-951-0592. 86% of global CEOs. So these are going to be your Fortune 500 companies, right? The biggest of the big these global companies, up to now 86% expect recession to hit big in 2023, Jason. And the problem is the amount keeps getting bigger. Right, so they come out with these results every month. First it was 30%, and then it was 45%, then it was 60%. Now it's 86%. But the amount of them that are believing that it's going to be mild and or short, that also is declining as well. It's getting worse.
What about the recession in 2022? Where's that one, Joe?
Come on, it's different this time, Jason. Come on.
I think the word recession.
It's not officially a recession, even though it met the criteria because of jobs.
The word recession, I don't think, is allowed until after the midterms. I think that's what's going on. Biden doesn't want to say it. Powell doesn't want to say it. So as soon as that midterm is over, Joe, next month, then the word recession will then be allowed to exist again.
And I think, why do I think you're right about that? It's going to be just like transitory, right? I guess they're going to have to retire. It's not a recession, after the midterms. It's the exact same thing.
Well,
listen,
Joe,
you can call it something else, but if it's a spade, it's a spade, right, Jason?
Well, if you have a recession right after the midterms, you can start calling a recession. That gives you 2 years before the presidential election to try to so-called fix it, so that Biden can run for re-election. That's how I see it. So you can call it recession in December of 2022, but by the time 2024 rolls around, that recession's over. Or if they can get it to like 0.1% growth, I guess, for a couple quarters, right? Oh, it's over. Biden fixed it, right? I think that's where they're headed.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at other things because I like to look down the road. The cattle industry, this thing just doesn't, it's just not getting any better. On average, cattle herds down 30% or more. And now what I'm hearing, Jason, if there's not moisture this winter, we could see mass liquidations of cattle herd because they just can't afford. Because here's the problem: if they can't graze on the lands these ranchers already own, in other words, hey, I just didn't grow enough hay, enough alfalfa, it just didn't grow. There wasn't enough rain. And I've got to go out and buy it on the open market. Jason, you're insolvent. You actually can't do it. The prices just doesn't work. We are going, and again, I think food prices, which are already up big, the fact that they gave everybody another 12.5% for food stamps, I think tells you all you need to know about where food prices are going to go next year as well.
Yeah, exactly, Joe. And all of this will be exacerbated by what I think they're going to call energy crisis once again after the midterms. It's going to be called an energy crisis late this year and early next year. How can it be anything but with another 2 million barrels not being produced by OPEC? They're creating the oil emergency, the energy emergency, Joe. So that's going to make food prices. Can you imagine? You know, the farmers are going to be planting in the spring. What is that going to cost, right? After the energy crisis that they're building into.
Well, gas may have went down in certain parts. Diesel certainly has not. So yeah, I think this is a big thing that we'll have to watch. Is how expensive is fertilizer going to be? Obviously, because to make fertilizer, you need energy, right? Natural gas, oil, coal, however you're feeding those power plants. How expensive is fertilizer going to be? How expensive is diesel going to be?
Exactly, Joe. Exactly. And we know that the storyline that we see, it's all Russia and Europe. I don't see an end to that. In fact, they seem like they're trying to heat that thing up a little bit. Seems like that's going to get a little worse this winter, Joe.
Yeah, it looks that way, right? And obviously, I know, I'm not trying to depress you. I'm just telling you this is what the numbers say.
Yep.
This is what it is. And the OPEC announcement today, you know, they're going to put their best spin on it and say, well, you know, Russia's not producing as much. It's not as big as a cut as you think because other countries are underproducing. And I'm just going to tell you right now, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig, Jason. And what happened today with OPEC is just another sign of America's imperialistic weakening throughout the world. And you can say it's not. You can try to say that, well, it's this and it's that. This is just the facts. When you have a clown in the presidential office, when you have an administration now, and it's not just the Biden administration, right? Go back to Obama, go back 10, 15 years, where they've been on this path, Jason, of they don't want people investing in oil, in natural gas, in cheap energy sources. They keep pushing this ridiculous fallacy about wind and solar, and now this is the ramifications of all of that.
Yeah, and I believe there's actually scientific energy, electromagnetic energy that could be used very cheaply. I think that it exists and it's being hidden, but the facts be that oil it's a monopolistic power by a few hands, a few families, just like the money system. But because that's the energy we use, you know, Germany. This is how important oil is. Germany could not bring America into World War II. They didn't have the ability to. They didn't have a navy, a fleet to come and attack us on the Atlantic coast. So what happened? How did they bring America into the war? Well, they choked off America and other allies, choked off the oil ability of Japan. Japan had no ability to grow their industrialized nation. It forced them to go attack, to go get oil, Joe. That's how quickly choking off energy supplies could turn into a world war, Joe.
800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back right after the break. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. We just have a handful of rolls of rounds here available. They're $570 a roll at 800-951-0592. Gold's down 11 at 17.10. Silver down now 60 cents. And man, silver just keeps steadily making it back here. 20.59 on silver. And again, the market's kind of having a sell-off this morning after that big two-day rally on somehow the Fed's going to stop raising rates. The data from today, wage data inside ADP, hotter than expected. And then, of course, the OPEC news, that it just how quickly things changed all the way up to the 2 million barrel rate cut coming out of OPEC. JP Morgan says expect $100 crude oil as soon as we stop the oil release from the Strategic Oil Reserve, which, Jason, is supposed to be in 2 more weeks.
Yeah, 2 more weeks. Okay, so yeah, the price of oil will probably, what is the second Tuesday of November? That's when it'll hit $100 a barrel, right?
Yeah, and again, I guess they could extend it. Here's the problem. The problem that we have now is we've got about 11 months of oil left in the reserve total. In other words, at what they're pumping a day out of the reserve, by next September, there would be no more oil in the reserve at all. Obviously, we can't get to that point. They've got to stop this thing at some point. I think that Jason's probably right. They've got it set up to go almost all the way right up until the actual election.
I mean, think about let's just say the Republicans get the House and the Senate back in the majority, right? And then November, is hitting and everything goes down. Oil goes to $100 and $120, $125 a barrel. Housing prices going down. The market's going down starting in November and December. Oh, it's the Republicans' fault. Yeah, you just elected all those Republicans. And anyone listen to me, I don't like Republicans or Democrats, but there's a storyline there, right, Joe? Oh, the emergency. Everyone knows that there's a bunch of really bad patriots out there. We call them terrorists, and we got to stop this thing. Look what they're doing to the economic world. It'll just be anyway you can point the finger, right, Joe? Except for the Ponzi scheme to central banks of the world, the ones that are actually causing this.
Yeah, and again, we'll have to watch and see how all of this plays out. The Biden administration already. I mean, they only announced the rate. The OPEC made their announcement about 45 minutes ago. The Biden administration now already saying rising gas prices is OPEC's fault.
Oh, the circular finger pointing. They
haven't even done it yet, but it's OPEC's fault.
Yeah. Well, never mind that Biden probably had something to do with that when he was discussing things with Saudi Arabia. There's just got to be a correlation, Joe. These things don't accidentally happen.
And again, and to your point, that pipeline didn't accidentally blow up. Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 didn't blow up on accident.
Nope. Russia.
Right? We are in the throes of this energy, to Jason's point, it's a fake energy shortage. It's deliberate is what it is. It's not fake, it's deliberate. A deliberate energy shortage, and we blow up pipelines to make the problem even worse, and then literally, 5 days later, OPEC says, hey, we're going to cut 2 million barrels of crude a day. Right at the same time, we're supposed to stop releasing oil out of the Strategic Oil Reserve in the next couple of weeks. I mean, that's another 1 million plus barrels a day off the market. Jason, it's insanity.
Yeah, it's not an accident that Biden shuts down all oil production on their federal lands. It's not an accident that Germany, who seems to be at the head of this emergency in Europe, starts shutting down all of their nuclear facilities. These aren't accidents. This is you can't point the finger. Germany can't point the finger at Russia if they're shutting down energy production. It doesn't matter what energy you're shutting down. They're shutting down nuclear energy, Joe. at the same time that Russia's threatening them with oil and natural gas. That's ridiculous. Think how dumb that is. There's no common sense at all.
I've had some people come out, and I'm people. These are people that have worked in the Department of Defense and had been involved in other administrations, saying that Germany was getting ready to buckle. And that's why they blew up the pipelines, because they didn't want Germany to give in, because they and again, I don't know, I'm not inside there, but I've been saying for a while now, Germany's got a big problem come this winter, and rumor has it they were getting ready to buckle. They were going to reach some kind of a deal with the Russians to supply more gas, and that was the reason. But who knows?
So you trace the Ukraine war, the path that leads to NATO, shoring up troops, and you got all this, the war stomping going on in February and March, April. And so what do? Well, let's just shut down. It's turning into an energy war and an economic war. Let's just shut down all of our nuclear plants. Yeah, that's the way to fight it. Yeah. It's called the buckle plan. I think they planned to buckle. Isn't that how you planned? Isn't that how you would plan to actually buckle and go Russia's way? Is just stop producing energy? It seems like that's got to be the plan, Joe.
Yeah, and this is going to be really interesting. How all of this really plays out. Again, we got a reprieve during the late summer here, but that was really just a big smoke screen. That was us flooding taking oil out of the strategic oil reserve, which we knew was only a short-term plan to try to hide the big energy prices. Europe's seen the brunt of it, but it's going to get a lot worse here as well. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised at how much their energy bills are going to rise on top of those prices at the pump going back up. Patriot Radio News Hour, final segment coming up. 800-951-0592, the last of the rounds, rolls of silver rounds at $5.70 a roll. You get 21-ounce silver rounds. They're coins, just not minted by the U.S. Mint. That's why you're saving almost $12 an ounce here at $570 a roll. $20 gold, $21.25. You're like, well, wait a minute, gold's down 10. How come the price is more? Listen, if gold was at $17.30 instead of $17.10, Jason, we'd probably be looking at $21.50 right now. So $21.25 is really a break here. Just a quick update. I'm watching the bond markets. We had a big drop in yields over those first 2 days of the week, and they've just reversed here. The U.S. 10-year note back to 3.8. The UK 10-year back above 4.03. Now, the UK government didn't really buy any bonds yesterday, Jason, and of course, that's all it takes. Boom, back above 4. But I'm really looking at Italian and Spanish bonds. The yields there, Jason, are up 25 basis points. The Italian 10-year now at almost 4.5. The Spanish 10-year well above 3 now. And Jason, so here's 2 more countries now. All of a sudden, hey, we may have a problem here.
Yeah, I remember after the economic crisis, the housing crash. I remember those years afterwards where Cyprus was in bad shape and Greece was all, people couldn't even get money out of the bank in Greece, and Spain was having trouble, and Italy was down there, and it's
the pigs, right? Yep. Portugal, Ireland, Greece, Spain.
Yeah, all those problems. Remember all those problems? It's like I don't think
they didn't fix those problems either, did they, Jason?
They didn't. I didn't hear any news about how all of that was fixed and it magically was better. They just kind of swept it under the rug for the next emergency, because now here you are reporting, well, there it is. As soon as there's economic weakness in the world, who are the first countries that pop up in Europe? It's always these guys, right?
Yeah, right. It's right. It always goes right back, doesn't it? Back to the same problems because they've never fixed them to begin with. 800-951-0592. rounds at $5.70 a roll. $20 gold pieces $21.25. $10 pieces at $11.25. $5 pieces at $5.65. The Dow's down over 300 plus points. Crude oil now approaching $89 a barrel. J.P. Morgan out now saying that when the strategic oil reserve comes to an end, they pretty much expect prices to go back to $100+ a barrel, which simply just means wherever that peak gas price was for wherever you lived. Like here in Arizona, it's $5. We're already back. We're here. We're at $5 now. Those prices are coming back. And if you live in the wrong place, i.e. Arizona, California refiners, and we've talked about this as well, these refiners were running all out all summer long. The maintenance needs to be done. And the problem, like in California, was before they could get the maintenance done, they had breakdowns, and this is why gas prices have skyrocketed on the West, Jason.
Yeah, and it'll go up everywhere. And there are parts of the country, like we have a nice little cheap place here in Colorado, but overall, when they start to go up, they go up across the board. And we'll be here to report it.
God bless everybody.